it's
Great.
amazing to have an FBI agent on, actually, or former FBI agent on, because I mean, I don't know how it is in the States, but here in the UK, we're always fascinated by American movies. That's a major thing, especially crime and thrillers, and FBI and CIA always at the forefront of majority of these
Yeah,
movies.
that's
So when I
true.
came across your content, I was super excited. I was like, wow, someone who I kind of recognize and relate to in terms of, like, both of us being of African descent, or African, or you being African American. And I just thought, well, it would be amazing to have you on here to tell a bit of your story and just, engage with you and share some of the stuff that, you've been involved in as an agent. First and foremost, you want to introduce yourself to the audience so that they know who you are.
Yeah, so I'm Jerri Williams, and I'm a retired FBI agent and now an author and a podcaster. And I like to say that I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to show the public who the FBI is and what the FBI does through my books and my blog and my podcast, Case Reviews with Former Colleagues.
Oh man.
Yeah, I think I'm most known because of the podcast. I've been podcasting for about 5.5 years, and my podcast is called FBI Retired Case File Review. And on it, I interview exclusively retired FBI agents about some of the FBI's biggest cases and cases that you might never have heard about.
Yeah, amazing. That's how I came across your work, actually, as well. And a few of friends of mine sent me, I think it was a video clip of you on another channel where you were reviewing crimes and whether they were accurate or not, and in particular crimes in relations to fraud, which we're going to get into. So I was like super intrigued by that, because most of the time when we watch movies, we either tend to think it's the gospel or it looks completely fake. So to have someone who's actively been in that environment review it kind of gave us a different side to it. But in relations to becoming an FBI agent, how does that come about? Is that something that did you set out to become an FBI agent, or is it something that you just became or dragged into?
Yeah, no, not at all. I was a psychology major in college or at the university, as you guys like to
Oh yes,
say.
yeah.
Yeah. And when I got out, my first professional job was as a juvenile probation officer. So I worked with young
Okay.
kids in the city, trying to get them to, get their lives together. I actually was working with youth that had already been through the court system and had been sent away to group homes and reform, schools and things like that, trying to, get them rehabilitated in some way so they can come back to the community. And so my job was to travel out to these facilities all over Virginia, sometimes with their parents and families. If they couldn't, get transportation, then I would take them. And then once they're out of that facility, after they've done their quote unquote time,
Mm.
then I would work with them in the community. And I did that job for a little over 3 years. And I was burning out.
Yeah.
You work with youth, so
Yeah.
it's emotionally rewarding
Hmm.
and emotionally draining at the same time. And so I started looking around, and I just came across this ad that the FBI was looking for women and minorities.
Mm.
And I was like, whoa, I never even thought about
Yeah.
being an FBI agent. I mean, to me, when you think about FBI agents, even now, when you think about an FBI agent, you think about a white male in a dark suit.
Yeah. With a
It
gun.
just
Yeah.
wasn't
And a badge.
yeah, yeah, it just wasn't me. But I called the number on the ad.
Mm. And what were they looking for in terms of, like, apart from just looking for the demographic side of things, what were some of the skill sets that were after that you possessed?
Well, the basic qualifications are that you have to be between 23 and you can't be older than 37. You can't have reached your 37th birthday. You
Okay.
also need to have a college degree. To be competitive, sometimes it means, having more than just the college degree, a master's, etc. But they're also looking for people who have work experience. Sometimes it's surprising to people to learn that becoming an agent is really a second career opportunity. Most of
Mm.
the agents have worked someplace for many years before they join the FBI. And that's why the average agent, the age of the average agent coming on board is 30 years old.
Oh,
So they've worked someplace else, which allows the Bureau to look at what they've done in the past in order to predict whether or not they can do the agent job. And
okay.
yeah, so that's the basic skills. But I mean, the bottom line is they're looking for people who are leaders. They're looking for people who can come into a situation, not know what's going on, and be able to start drilling down and trying to figure out what's happening. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the basic skill sets of this job.
Yeah, it shows the importance of having life skill sets in regards to, like, finding
Yeah.
yourself in certain positions. So when you got into the to FBI, were in there? So were there many African Americans in there at all?
No, not really. I was the 23rd black female. And at the time when I came in, and I came in a while ago,
Yeah.
1982, but I was the 23rd black female, and that was out of about 9,000 agents.
Oh wow.
Um, so we made up about 0.5%. Now there's about 13, 14,000 agents, but black women still make up around 1% of
Mm.
the agent rank. So, it's still
Yeah.
not a lot of black females, and as far as African American or black agents altogether, it is less than 5%. It's 4 point something percent. So even on TV shows and in movies, you really see a diverse
Mm.
look at the agents. A lot of
Yeah.
times on the TV shows, there's African American and Asian and Hispanic agents running around all the time,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, for whatever reason, they're still pretty low as far as diversity in the FBI. I think it's a major problem. I think
Yeah.
it's a major problem for all law enforcement agencies, because they really should reflect the community for which they serve. And the fact that the bureau is still, I think the last time I looked, it was like 83% white males, white females.
Yeah.
That's I think that's an issue that the bureau is trying to address, but for some reason, uh, those
Yeah.
numbers don't seem to be
Yeah,
increasing.
it's kind of interesting to hear because whenever you watch movies, there seems to be a real great mixture. So you tend to think that the demographics is quite mixed, but then to hear that in reality isn't so. So movie representation and real life representation is completely different at times. But then it's great to have people like yourself at the forefront doing the type of work you do, which enables people to see that okay, there are positions for someone who potentially looks like me in such a position. Because when I think of the FBI, CIA, we got MI5 and MI6 here. I never think I could possibly, or I could have possibly, when I was younger, gone into these fields or these sectors of work because I just never saw that representation. And James Bond was our MI5 or MI6 agent, and it's like James Bond looks nothing like me. Well, we've been trying to get Idris Elba to go into James Bond now, but
I know that'd be
uh,
great.
yeah, that would be great. But we doubt that's gonna happen. What department did you work in?
I work in economic crime. And so economic crime are financial fraud. So you got your Ponzi schemes, your
Mm,
advance fee schemes, your business to business telemarketing,
mm,
embezzlement, things of those nature. So any type
mm,
of con men kind of fraud is
yeah.
what I work primarily for most of my career. And I do want to go back and just say something about those TV shows and
Mhm,
movies. Even though they don't represent the reality, they still do an excellent job, because when people look at it and they
mm.
think that's the way it is, that gives them the thought that, oh, this is
Let's hope.
cool. It's
Yeah.
something that I could do. So I'm not upset
No,
that
definitely
they
not.
make it appear to be more diverse. I think it's a great way to it's a recruitment tool in a
Yeah,
sense. Yeah.
most definitely is. So, working in the department that you worked in, what makes a case sort of FBI worthy instead of like a local agency dealing with it? So, at what point does it go into the FBI now for someone like you to deal with one of the cases that you deal with?
Yeah, so there's over 200 to 300 different violations that the
Mm,
FBI works. But the biggest distinction is that it has to affect interstate commerce. It has to be something that is not just a local matter. Now,
mm,
it could be just the fact that, a telephone call was made from one state to another state,
mm,
or a banking transaction occurred, from one state to another state. Are that goods that were stolen were purchased in one place and were delivered in another place. But it really is a set criteria of jurisdiction,
mm,
and it's sometimes there are cases that are FBI under the FBI's jurisdiction, but also could be a local case or a state case too. And
mm,
it's one of those situations where the different agencies get together and either decide to work them together or figure out what would be the best for that particular case, as
yeah,
far as whether it's going to end up in state court or federal court, and who's going to get the most time and who has the manpower and the resources to work that case. But usually there is a big distinction between the type of cases that the FBI is going to take and the type of cases that would be worked locally or with the state.
yeah. And does the amount of money that's being sort of circulated matter as well in terms of it being an FBI case?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Again, it's a matter of, even if it meets all the criteria, it's a matter of utilizing FBI resources as best as possible. So that may mean that, if a case comes in and somebody lost $200,000, you know, it just is not going to be a case that that local FBI office is going to handle.
Mm,
Maybe something that was, $2 million. And a lot of times what we say is, if you think that you're one, I'm just basically talking about the work that I did
mm,
in economic crime. But if somebody were to come in and they would say they thought they were defrauded, and I could say to them, if you think that there are more victims out there, then it may be a matter of you gathering that information, finding who those victims are, and maybe we can, bring everybody together and get that dollar amount,
mm,
that exposure number, that level of fraud, up to something that the FBI would be able to investigate, and the U.S. Attorney's Office, who are the prosecutors, the federal prosecutors, believe would meet those guidelines too. And
okay.
so it's not a definite that we wouldn't work a victim case, but it may be one that we are trying to gather as many victims as possible in order to make it a case that would be something that the FBI could utilize their manpower and their resources to work.
Yeah. I read a wonderful quote that you stated. You said, with a gun they can steal thousands, but with a lie they can steal millions.
Yes.
So that's a really incredible quote, because I mean, if you apply that to most things nowadays in regards to like what's happening politically in the business world, corporation wise, we know where the biggest, thefts are taking place.
Yeah.
Um, so with that quote in mind, what would you say is the biggest case you worked on, and does that quote apply to that case, and how did that
Oh,
apply to
yeah.
it?
It applies to all of my cases.
Yeah,
And I'm really proud. I kind of, at one time, I had used, with a gun, you can steal hundreds, and with a pen, you can
yeah,
steal millions. And then one day it just hit me. No, it's a lie. It's the
yeah,
lie, because that's what fraud is. Fraud is when you gain something of value by a lie or deception.
mm,
That's what fraud is. And so it's the lie itself that allows people to, steal millions. And so for
mm,
me, one of the biggest cases that I ever worked was a $350 million Ponzi scheme.
wow,
And it was a charity Ponzi scheme where the founder of this uh, foundation. It was called the Foundation of New
Mm,
Era Philanthropy. He was telling people that if you want to give to nonprofits, if you want to give to charities, that if you allow me to hold on to your money for
mm.
6 months or more, I have anonymous donors, and don't laugh because people fell for this.
Yeah.
I have anonymous donors who will double your money. So if you want to do good, if you want to do
Mm,
God's work,
mm,
instead of just giving somebody $50,000, because a lot of these were rich, donors, if you give it to me, I will have it doubled, and you can give your charity $100,000.
wow.
And people believed in him.
Yeah,
It
people
wasn't
do.
like he just showed up one day. He had been
Mm,
working in the community in Philadelphia for a number of years, first as a drug counselor, and then as somebody who taught nonprofits how to raise funds. And so
mm,
he was this fundraising guru who was teaching nonprofits how to get money to do their good works. And so when he brought up this scenario of anonymous donors, they believed him.
mm.
He had already been established in the community, and boy, oh boy, he just was raking in the money, just bringing in the money again to the tune of $350 million.
Wow, that's incredible. And how long is he serving now for that?
He served for 12 years. He's out
Mm,
by now, but he
okay.
served for 12 years. And it was like a strange case because you always wonder, within the type of cases that I worked,
Mm,
why did this happen? And so
yeah.
many times, and not to make it sound like people who commit cons or frauds are any better than anybody else who commits a crime.
Mm,
But a lot of times, these frauds occur when somebody has a business that starts to fail, and
mm,
in their desperation because of their own narcissism or ego, they can't let it fail. Then they are so desperate that they look for resources and funding and money to help that failing business, to try to keep that failing business from collapsing. And
mm,
so I think that's what happened with him. And it was just such a fascinating case to me because, again, he was a Christian, and he was doing this God's work, and he talked about it so much that I decided to write a novel about it. So, one
mm.
of my crime novels, because I do nonfiction and crime fiction, is about this case. The book is called Greedy Givers, and it's
Yeah,
kind of, it's inspired by this case. It's not a true crime, but it was just my way of trying to visualize in my mind how somebody who was doing good could do so bad.
yeah. That is incredible because I always thought about it, the psychology behind these type of frauds. Because I mean, now in the 21st century, we always receive these emails and text messages about, there's some money left over from my dying uncle who was a king back in Nigeria, which is the famous one. And
Yes.
even though I'm well aware that these are fraudulent, every time I look at them, there's a sense of hope that, wait, could this one possibly be true? I'm never going to reply or send my bank details, but there's always something inside of me. I mean, is that like human greed? What is that psychology behind it that kind of pushes us to do it? And I think me being so well aware of it and being fairly streetwise, I think there must be thousands of people out there that would have sent their details or paid the initial installment of £1,000 to receive 100 million, which is never going to arrive. So what is that causes people to fall for these schemes when they clearly
Yeah.
know there are schemes?
Sometimes it's greed, sometimes it's desperation. If
Mm,
that email falls in your email account at the time where you're looking for something better for yourself, something better for your family, you might fall for it. Maybe not
mm,
that one because they're trying to get money from you, but there are others where you can get trapped into the scheme because you're looking for money too. And I guess that's why I called the book Greedy Givers, because so many times people who fall for some of these frauds and some of these scams
mm,
are also the con men's looking for money, fast money, easy money, and the victims are also looking for fast money, easy money. So you know,
Yeah.
it's a cycle. You know,
Yeah. How was this case? So how was this case broken? How were you able to figure out that this individual was running a Ponzi scheme, and how did I come to the to your
you
table?
know, I laugh every time somebody asks me that question because it was a strange case. We actually learned the FBI learned about this case
Mm.
by reading a front page of the newspaper
Oh wow! Was it someone randomly
because
in office was reading?
yeah,
Yeah.
because the foundation had been building, supposedly this huge investment account where the money was going to sit for 6 months or more
Mm.
in order for the anonymous donor to match it. And so there should have been millions of dollars sitting in an account. And of course, there wasn't because the money that comes in from new investors is used to pay the initial
Mm.
investors. That's what a Ponzi scheme is all about. But when it got to a point where he wasn't able to bring in enough new investors to pay the old investors, he took out a loan, from the investment company. And once they could see that, wait a minute, I don't know if he could pay this. I don't know if there's enough money. There's not enough money here for him to be able to pay this account. So they called it. They did a margin call. And because of that, it forced the company into bankruptcy. And so that was what we saw, that day on the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer,
Mm.
that this company, this Foundation for New Era Philanthropy, was filing for bankruptcy. And in it, the reporter indicated that it smelled like it may have been a Ponzi scheme. So before that, the bankruptcy court and the Security Exchange Commission, were questioning the
Mm.
legitimacy of this foundation, but they had not reached out to law enforcement yet. And so as soon as I saw that headline, in
Mm.
the paper, I ran into my supervisor's office and I said, "Look at this. I'm gonna check this out." And that's how the case got started from the newspaper.
Oh, I see.
No, nobody else bothered to
Nobody
call
else,
us.
yeah. So when you're dealing with your cases, do you deal with it in terms of like the full process? So you do the investigation and then the arrest as well. So like we see in the movies, for instance,
Yeah, yeah,
is that
yeah,
how is
yeah.
that what your job entailed?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
in the FBI, every agent is assigned cases.
Mm.
So if you are coming in as a special agent, you're going to work on a particular squad, and each squad usually has a number of violations that they work. And so I worked on an economic crime squad. So everybody on my squad, did financial frauds.
Mm.
That there might be a squad that has organized crime, and there might be a squad that does drug enterprises, drug trafficking, another one that does violent crime, cyber crime, et cetera, like that. So you're on those squads where everybody who is working on your squad mates are all doing the same type of violation, the same type of cases, but you're given a load of cases. It could be anywhere from 5 to 25
Mm.
cases that you are responsible for. So it's almost like running your own business.
Yeah.
You decide, when you're going to work that case. You decide whether or not, what resources you need as far as, do you need money to buy things? Do you need money to get equipment that you need to use? You also decide on manpower. Is this something that you can work yourself, or do you need other agents on your squad to help you with surveillances, arrests? But your job is to gather the evidence. So you have an allegation,
Mhm.
which has been predicated. You know for a fact that you've heard that this person has done something wrong and has done something in the past. And so you are gathering that information to prove that allegation.
Mm.
That's what you're doing. And you're doing that by interviewing people, by conducting surveillances, by looking and reviewing documents. Um, you're talking to people that were involved in the crime or witnesses or victims, and you're gathering all that information. It could take weeks. It could take years. It depends on how complicated the investigation is. But at the end, you gather all your evidence and you worked with a federal prosecutor, United States, an
Mm,
assistant United States attorney, and together you prepare the affidavit for arrest and search warrants, and then it's off to court, for
yeah,
trial to finally present all your evidence to the court and
yeah.
see what happens.
So when you're looking into like the evidence or reading up on someone's crime, have you come across a criminal or a criminal organization that blew your mind in terms of how they conducted business? So maybe like, the way that they laundered money or the way that they defrauded people, and you thought, wow, okay, these people are really, really good. Like, were they, is there one particular case or a couple that you can tell us about that blew your mind?
I think one that I found really interesting actually came to me from an agent who was working a drug investigation.
Mm.
And do you remember? Well, we just talked about Idris Elba, but
Yeah,
do you remember Stringer Bell
string
on
of
The
bells, yes, the
Wire?
wire,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it was really very much like that. It was a
Yeah.
drug dealer who was trying to use his money to flip houses, to purchase homes, renovate them, and sell them.
Mm,
And so this was his way of kind of not only money laundering to take his illegal funds and now put them into a legitimate business and clean those
mm,
funds, but also just a way of him trying to get out of the drug business and to become a businessman,
mm.
like Stringer Bell. I love
Yeah.
that show.
Yeah,
And
amazing.
and so that's what he was doing. I got involved in the case when the agent who was working the drug angle told me about this basically mortgage and and housing fraud that he was conducting, because he was getting people in the community to buy these homes by having them lie about their income and their employment and their ability to pay the loans back. And
Mm,
so that's a fraud.
yeah.
And so he said to me, I know the drug part. I know that type of investigation, but can you help me with the fraud? And so we began working together, and it was a fascinating case. And
Yeah.
just to see what he was doing. And a lot of people thought he was another good guy in the community, buying these homes and fixing them up, but he was doing a terrible job.
Yeah.
So not only did the people not really be able to afford those homes. So, if you lie and when your mortgage is due, you can't pay
Mm,
it, then, how helpful was that? But the houses that he had renovated, the job was just terrible. I mean, next
yeah.
thing you know, the toilet's overflowing or the ceiling's
Yeah.
falling down, or, something's happening. And of course, now the people own the home, so they can't call him back. They'd like to,
Yeah.
but they also can't afford to fix it. So it was a fascinating case. I really enjoyed working that one.
Oh, that's intriguing because you get a lot of these type of stories, especially when watching movies or reading up on crime, where you have gangsters who are trying to reform and then they get into like the property or they get into other forms of businesses. And I mean, the classic one is I don't know how true this is, but the classic one is with the mafia and the casinos, and that seems to be like the one that has some sort of legacy that's kind of lasted time. Why were they able to cipher through and build such a massive portfolio?
Yeah, I it is so difficult for them to do that now just because of the
Mm,
gaming commission and who can be and can't be involved. But definitely at the beginning of the casinos, and especially in the Las Vegas era, the organized crime did get in there and were able to skim so much of the money that was coming in off the top. And of course that meant not paying taxes
mm,
and not truly showing what income was flowing into these casinos. But that is just part of the criminal element, and it just shows you how financial fraud, financial crime is tied into all these other
Mm,
crimes, that you work, because whether it's a casino, which is kind of hard to do, but any type of cash business such as a strip club
mm,
or restaurant or a bar or a laundromat or car wash, any type of business where you're bringing in lots of cash, definitely there could be, or an organized crime enterprise would be very interested in,
mm.
being a part of that
Yeah.
business and taking some of that money off the top.
Yeah, I guess businesses where you're dealing with cash directly is easier to cook the books because it's up as they say, because it's up to you to write the amount that you received for a service on there because you got cash in hand. Is that why when you watch a lot of the old classic movies, they tend to open up laundry mats, like dry cleaners and
Yes,
car washes and so forth, or
yes,
car repair shops, because that was the easy way of like
yeah.
streaming through money. But going
A
forward
lot of
now,
times, I was going to say, a lot of times it's not just them trying to skim money, it's for them trying to launder money,
mm,
to legitimize their dirty money. Where'd you get that money from? Where'd it come from? You can't say,
yeah.
well, I got it from loan sharking or from, selling drugs or, having prostitutes. If you could say you got it because you own a pizza place or you own a car wash, that legitimizes the money so that you can spend it on things like cars and houses and vacations, because otherwise, you start spending money, people want to know where the money came from.
Yeah, but then how do you go about hiding so many millions when how many business would you need to have in order to hide like 100 or 300 million?
Yeah,
Like
a
it's
lot of
near
businesses, it's
a lot of businesses, yeah, and I'm sure people do try to. But in the age of sort of digital currency and we're moving into online banking and so forth, how has the game changed for fraudsters? Like when it comes to, or not fraudsters in general, but criminal organizations when it comes to laundering and hiding money, because it's starting to become a bit more stringent and more difficult to do so.
yeah, it is and isn't, because some of the same tools that you could use to to launder money, are really some of the same tools that you would use, in this digital age.
Mm.
Matter of fact, I was listening to this podcast. Oh, I wish I could remember the name of it. Um, but it is about the Bitcoin owner, who gathered all this money in. I think it was $1 billion or a couple of $1 billion, and then died without
Wow.
leaving the passwords. Have you heard that one?
I've heard of
Uh,
it, but I haven't read into it. No, yeah,
Yeah, that I find it
yeah,
fascinating, but it's still the same type of investment fraud that I used to work. It's
yeah.
still the same thing, but now it's in the digital age. So
Mm,
I think that no matter what kind of technology we have, how things seem to change, the people who are committing these type of crimes, they just keep up with the technology. But at the end, it's the same greed, the same motivation that causes them to feel that they need to have access to other people's money.
yeah,
And so the game continues no matter how the technology changes.
changes. Yeah.
They'll find a way. They'll find a way.
What's the most common type of fraud then currently?
I think probably I think it's advance fee. I would
Mm,
think it's an advance fee fraud. And that's where somebody who is looking to get a loan because they have a business, again, that they want to start, or a business that isn't doing well and they need to get new capital, then they go out and they try to find somebody who will invest in their business. Well,
mm,
there are a number of people, let's call them brokers, loan brokers, who will say to somebody, "Hey, I have a portfolio of financiers, of people willing to invest in your business. And all you need to do is to pay me a percentage of the loan that I'm going to obtain for you. And, I will be able to go to this venture capitalist and get you your money. And, I will do my best efforts in order to get this loan." And of
mm,
course, somebody says, "Okay, I'm looking for a loan for, $400,000 or $4 million, and here's a percentage, of that loan for you to go and introduce me to this venture capitalist, to this investor. And you give them the money,
mm.
and then you never see him again.
Yeah.
So I think the advance fee scheme is probably one of the most prevalent, because it's a situation where the bad guy is, has his victim right there in front of him. The
Mm,
victim wants something. The victim is desperate. The victim needs his skills. So all he needs to do is be able to convince this victim that he has the ability to follow through, the
mm.
ability to get them this loan. And if he can make them believe him, they will do anything
Anything.
that
Yeah.
he asks them in order to make this happen.
Yeah.
And, if he's a good guy, or a good con man, then your money's gone.
Yeah, human emotion is one of those tricky ones where it's easy to manipulate people into doing stuff. I was watching a interesting documentary recently about the online dating schemes where you have young men from all across the world pretending to be women, for instance, and talking to older gentlemen from other various places in the world, and with promises of love and sexual favors and stuff, and then they're constantly sending them money, and it's becoming more sophisticated and more sophisticated. It's like technology is being used for various fraudulent activities. Do you have a separate technology unit in FBI, or is it the same when working with economic fraud?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Is there a technology department that deals with like specifically online and
Yeah, yeah. There's
yeah,
definitely a whole cyber crime, division, cybercrime
mm,
unit that is looking into things. But again, as I talked about financial crimes, even cyber crime is something that is not really an entity or a violation in itself. For
mm,
instance, if somebody is selling illegal drugs online, is that cybercrime or is that drug trafficking? If
mm,
somebody is online and they're child predator. Is that cybercrime, or is that a crime against crimes against
mm,
children? And so, although there is a cybercrime unit, it is not. It is acknowledged that that kind of crime goes into all types of violations, but definitely the FBI has a very strong cybercrime uh, agents and resources and manpower. And that's one of the areas that they're always recruiting, for,
mm,
people coming in with those skill sets and, cyber skill sets.
yeah. How many years did you spend in the FBI?
26.
26. Yeah. How would you sort of summarize your experience in that 26-year period, and what would you say about the FBI as an
Yeah.
agency or an organization?
I would say fantastic.
Yeah.
There is no job like it, a
Mm,
job like no other, as the recruiting campaign goes.
yeah.
It's fascinating. It's a fascinating opportunity to, watch the FBI change,
Mm,
because I came in in early in 1982 at a time when the FBI was known strictly as a law enforcement agency. And then, of course, after 9/11, things kind of changed. And now the FBI was tasked for not only investigating crime after it occurred, but also tasked with now with being an intelligence driven agency, where they're expected to stop crime before it happens, to
mm,
prevent, the next 9/11 or terrorist attack. So I watched the FBI as it kind of changed, still doing some of the traditional work of the FBI, but definitely into a new era of intelligence driven, investigations.
yeah. What's the major difference? Because from my understanding, so I wanted to know the difference between sort of like the CIA and the FBI. From my understanding, CIA is more international, and FBI is more internal. What other differences are there
Yeah,
in terms of
a lot of
intelligence
people,
work?
yeah, a lot
Yeah.
of people think that, but the FBI is as international as the CIA is. And
Okay.
so, we have, oh, wow, I hope I don't get this number right, but
Mm.
wrong, but I think it's like 60 plus 63 offices around the world.
Okay.
That's not the 56 offices that the FBI has in the United States, but we also have agents stationed and assigned to offices around the world.
Mm.
Now, the difference is those agencies, those agents must work with the local police and that country's security and police forces.
Mm.
The FBI can't go into another country and start investigating, and
Yeah.
doing the things that they do on TV. They work with that foreign country. But we have representation in most of the places around the world, not only to help agents in the United States who are investigating a case that has an international or global nexus, but also to help those countries investigate crimes that may have a U.S. nexus. And
Mm.
so it's basically us working with our law enforcement partners, in the United States and overseas, and many of the things. The difference between the FBI and the CIA is that the CIA is strictly an intelligence gathering entity. They
Okay.
don't have any law enforcement capabilities.
So they can't arrest
They
people and
are
stuff.
out.
So they.
Yeah, they're out
Mm.
trying to gather information that will help the United States become, strong or stay
Mm.
strong, as a global entity. That they're out there gathering that information, but they're not law enforcement. Now they may
Okay.
work with the FBI on many cases that there's a responsibilities for any type of intelligence cases here in the U.S. and that start or occur overseas.
Oh, amazing. So when people meet you, for instance, and you tell them that you've worked for the FBI, what are some of their major misconceptions? Because I had a funny conversation with one of my friends when I told him that you were coming on, and then he was like, "Are you sure you want your camera to be on? Because they might be, they might send a secret signal to your house that starts spying on you." I said, "Look, my house is just boring. I've got nothing to hide anyway." And it's like people have all these weird misconceptions about, working for such agencies. I think majority of that is birthed from movies and conspiracy theories and so forth. What are some of the misconceptions that you come across?
Yeah, that definitely is one of the big ones. I mean, the FBI is not interested in the average citizen. I mean, we
Mm,
don't have the manpower or the time or, to be
mm,
dealing with somebody who's not doing anything wrong. We are a law enforcement agency. Yes, we also
mm,
intelligence um, gathering, but there's still guidelines and rules and regulations for us to follow when it comes to that intelligence gathering. So,
mm,
it's not in most cases a
mm,
covert agency. Most people that knew me when I was in the bureau knew what I did.
mm,
So uh, it just is. It's not a secret agency.
mm,
It's not something that you need to worry about. We're like very much so like any other law enforcement agency, where as we like to say, we're here to help.
yeah,
We're here to make the United States and our citizens safe, and to gather the evidence to show people who are committing crimes, who are not obeying the rules and the laws, who are jeopardizing the health and well-being of citizens. We're here to gather that information and put them into jail.
yeah.
you
What
know.
would you say to anyone that wants to join the agency, or maybe had a dream about joining the agency or passion for it and just don't know how to go about doing it? What would you say
I
to
say,
such
come
people?
on. Now, one
Mm,
thing is you do have to be an American citizen.
mm-hmm,
So you could be a naturalized citizen, et cetera, even though it's a little hard sometimes to complete the security clearance, the background investigation, if you spent a lot of time overseas. But definitely, you have to be an American citizen. But if you meet that guideline and all the other guidelines, I say, come on. It is a fantastic career.
yeah.
I mean, it really is. All the things that you see on TV and movies, the only exaggeration is that they happen every day or they
Mm,
happen every week. They happen. I mean,
yeah.
those arrests, those, those situations that you see agents on TV in, they happen, but they just don't happen all the time and not to the same agent over and over again. But it's an
Yeah.
exciting and rewarding career. And it's one of the best things that ever happened to me,
Oh,
aside
amazing.
from my family and my children. It's
Yeah.
Fascinating,
Are
to
any of your
have.
kids in the agency?
No,
No,
I
they
I
did.
tried. I tried my best. I got grandkids. I got grandkids now, so
Yeah.
hopefully, that I still have a chance of getting somebody that a legacy
Yeah.
into the FBI.
So I was saying you got a wonderful YouTube channel where you analyze and break down, specific cases, big cases, and cases that people generally didn't know about that you worked on previously. So I just wanted to know if there's any work that you got coming out that you wanted the people to know about, whether that'll be a new book and
Yeah.
any specific things that you're going to be targeting.
Yeah, I really enjoy my YouTube channel. It
Mhm,
is actually, my podcast, just the audio only. So it hasn't grown as big. The podcast has done really, really well.
mhm.
It's always one of the top true crime podcast on Apple.
Amazing.
It gets someplace up there,
Mm,
in the true crime. The podcast on YouTube, I hope to that does a little bit better as
mm,
people get to know me. There's some fascinating cases on there. I just had two that were released that were about the FBI profilers at the Behavioral Analysis Unit. And those were the last two that I released. But we were talking about, since we were talking about African Americans and
mm,
Black agents, there are two episodes that I really like for people to take a look at. And it's episode 207, and that's with my mentor,
mm,
Wayne Davis, who goes through the history of the African American FBI agent. And the other one is something very similar. And I wrote it down. It was episode 186,
mhm,
and it's with John Glover. And it was actually the episode I did when the FBI celebrated the 100th anniversary of African American agents in the FBI. So 186 and 207
yeah,
are great episodes if people are interested in learning about that type of history. But there are other episodes about I talk to agents from retired agents who have
mm,
worked such a variety of cases, and so there could be cases that are, and dealing with espionage, your
mm,
spy cases, organized crime, your white collar crime, and corruption. I've done, as of us talking, I'll be uploading my 237th
wow,
236 episode.
amazing.
And it's just a full variety of episodes there that I hope people check out. And
Yeah.
guess what? Ad free.
Ah, amazing. I'm definitely going to check them out, and I'm going to recommend all my listeners and viewers to check them out as well. That's amazing. Yeah, I completely understand what you're going through in regards to, like, the audio podcast to YouTube is completely two different realms.
Right.
Similar to me, like I get great stats audio, and it's only recently I'm starting to build the YouTube side of things. You realize there's a completely different ball game,
Yeah, it is.
and yeah, people really get into it. But I love stories like yourselves and listening to true crime stories stories. It kind of it puts you into a world that you're not engaging in, but you're always intrigued to learn more about and to figure out, how people work. Because I love psychology and I love culture and politics, and to understand how people maneuver and how people think and what makes people do what they do intrigues me. So listening to true stories like that, I'm always amazed by it. And listening to people who actively worked within the field, it's even better on its own. So that's amazing. I'm definitely going to check it out, and I recommend that everyone checks it out as well. But Jerry, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. I know you've got another show coming up shortly as well, so I'm not going to keep you too long, so you can have a bit of respite and prepare for that. But just like I say, I noticed all the badges and the plaques at the back. What are they, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so the big round one in the very back is
Yeah.
the official FBI seal. I mean,
Mhm.
that is the emblem that people see, when they talk about the FBI. That's the one that's going to be on business cards. That's,
Mm,
in every office, you see that the big FBI seal.
mm,
The gold one is the actual FBI badge that agents carry. We actually carry what we call credentials, and our credentials are, it's like a leather wallet that you open up that shows your picture ID and that you're a special agent. It's your official certification that you show. So
mm,
agents on some TV shows, the police comes in and they show a badge. Now we show our credentials, but sometimes the your badges can be put on the backside of your credentials,
mhm.
or sometimes agents wear them on their belt. But Also back there is, I have a scrapbook of all the things I collected over my career, and you see my books,
Oh,
my crime
amazing.
novels. Pay to Play and Greedy Giver, about a black female FBI agent investigating fraud and corruption.
So
And
about
then my two
yourself.
non, yeah, and then you have my two nonfiction books
Mm,
about the FBI myths and misconceptions. That's where I break down movies and TV shows and show you what they get right and what they get wrong, and all the different cliches, about 20 cliches about the FBI that you normally see in books, TV, and movies.
yeah, amazing. One final question before I let you go. This just popped into my head. So looking from the outside in now, in terms of looking at the states, there seems to be sort of like a major breakdown between law enforcement and the black community in particular. I just wanted to know what are your thoughts on it, and what do you think could be done to bridge that gap, and what should be done in order to bridge that breaking relationship there.
Well, I think, the whole topic of this conversation at the beginning
Mm,
of law enforcement agencies should reflect the community for which they serve.
mm,
And I think a lot of the issues that are happening today is because many of them don't. And those communities feel they're not being heard, they feel they're not being served, and that is a problem that the law enforcement agency must address. No matter what your thoughts are or what you think about, the protest and what people are saying, there is a problem that needs to be addressed. As a law enforcement agency who's supposed to be serving the community, helping the community, if the community doesn't trust you, then you need to fix that problem. You
yeah.
can't expect the community to fix the problem. You have to fix the problem. And so, one of the best ways to go about doing that is to recruit more people from the community that can help with that dialogue and help address those issues and problems, and to restore faith in law enforcement. Because the
Yeah.
bottom line is, law enforcement is supposed to be serving the community. And so many law enforcement agencies and so many police officers and FBI agents are doing that. But obviously, there are some issues with those who are not.
Yeah. Jerry, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing
Mhm.
your knowledge and your wisdom with us. It's been truly incredible. And I'm I'm pleased to have you on there, and I'm truly honored as well. Hopefully, we can catch up one day again in the future and have a further in-depth talk in regards
Oh,
to
I'd like that.
some of your books. Yeah, because what I'm going to do now, what I tend to do is every time I prefer to speak to people before I read up on them. So, I've spoken to you now. I'm going to go ahead and read all your books, and I'm probably going to have like 1,000 questions. So we'd love to catch up with you once I've scoured through all your books and watched all your content. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. It's
Yeah,
been fun. I'm so glad to have this opportunity to meet you.
yeah.
So yeah, yeah, call
Oh,
me
thank
up.
you. Appreciate it.
I'll
No,
come
definitely will
back.
do. Yeah.